My guest today is a consultant and an author, someone who's traveled the country talking to church leaders about the time that we are in. And she's written this book. It is How to Lead When You Don't Know Where You Are Going. She wrote this book before the pandemic, but it certainly applies to what we're going through now and what churches have been going through. So happy to have with us via Zoom Reverend Susan Beaumont. She's joining us from Michigan. Susan Beaumont, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ben. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
So you are a consultant. You travel the country talking to churches, synagogues. Tell us a little bit about that. What is it? How does that work? What do you do?
Right. So the kind of consulting that I do with congregations is organizational development and leadership development. So I've been working for about 20 years with congregations on issues of board development, staff team development, strategic planning, pastoral transitions, and in general, coping with and managing change scenarios.
And you wrote this book, How to Lead When You Don't Know Where You Are Going. You wrote that before the pandemic, based on the upheaval we're seeing in churches, even pre-pandemic, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the book is about a concept that is called liminality. So liminality is about the in-between spaces when you are stuck in between something that has ended and a new thing that is not yet ready to begin. So you are neither here nor there, and yet you have to lead. And I wrote the book because it had become increasingly clear to me that the church, capital C, large church, has been in a liminal season for some time. We've been in a period of marked decline, of trying to rediscover what church in the next chapter will look like. And leaders have been flummoxed for a while about what the right kind of leadership style for a season like this one is. But then shortly after the book came out, the pandemic hit. And now everyone understands the lived experience of liminality. So it feels like the book has just a really vibrant presence all of a sudden of people understanding that they are in a liminal space.
And when you talk about a liminal season, there's a biblical aspect to that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Every single one of our great biblical stories is a story of liminality. All of our biblical heroes, from our stories of the Garden of Eden, of Adam and Eve being driven out into liminality, setting up the human experience as one long liminal experience until the end times come. Every other biblical hero, we can name Abraham and Sarah, Joseph, Noah in the ark, Jonah in the belly of the whale. All of them have this experience of leaving something that felt certain, that had given them an understanding of who they were, entering a space that was defined and unknown, being transformed there by God, and then coming out on the other side with a new identity, a stronger identity, and a sense of calling into a new chapter.
What are you hearing from churches? What are you seeing as far as the pandemic on top of all the other stuff?
Yeah, on top of racial justice reckoning, on top of everything else that's been happening in the world of church. So, it's difficult to come up with one characterization of what this time means for people, because it's had so many different phases to it. I mean, there was the initial phase of everyone scurrying about when we got thrown out of our buildings, trying to figure out how do you do all of this work virtually. Then there was a period after Easter that felt like it had a lot of vibrancy, where people were feeling energized and creative. But then we thought this would end, and it didn't. And that took us into a summer period that was just kind of a malaise kind of time. And then things got really difficult in the fall, when most churches are accustomed to having a big restart to a program year, and there was no restart. There were, our buildings didn't all reopen. Some did, but many did not. And kind of this just ongoing, we have to keep doing this and we have to keep doing this. I would say that a general statement I can make about the impact of the pandemic is that it has accelerated whatever trends were out there. So some struggling congregations declined much more quickly once the pandemic hit. Many have had to close their doors. Other churches that were thriving and were doing really creative things, maybe thriving even more. So we have many experiences of congregations that report their giving levels have maintained at the levels they were before, and that attendance online has grown for them, and they're drawing people from around the world. And other people feeling like, oh, this is, we have to get people back in the building, or we won't have a church on the other side of this. So it has been a really complicated set of responses. One thing I would say that's true for all churches is that staff teams are exhausted right now. They're people who are designed to be interactive with people who are doing their work in isolation, and they're doing everything online and trying to do some things in person, and it's just really wearing everybody out.
What do you think is the appropriate response right now for church leaders? Should they be starting new programs in the midst of this? Should they? What do you think they should be doing?
Well, what I have been talking to people about, and what I write about in the book, is that this is a season for a spiritual shift in leadership. And I've been inviting people into 3 intentional shifts in their own inner spirit that then reflects itself in how they lead. The first shift is away from a stance of knowing things, having a lot of expertise, knowing answers to things, moving into a place of unknowing. I'm not talking about people being stupid. I'm talking about people not being attached to the wisdom, the knowledge that guided them before, because it just isn't going to work here. So holding what they think they understand about church life at kind of an arm's length so they can reflect on it and see it and not be attached to their own knowledge. The second shift, I think, is a shift away from advocacy to a stance of deep attending. So away from being prescriptive about how church has to happen, into a place of really deep noticing and listening. What do you see around you that's wanting to emerge, and how do you attend to that? And then the third shift that I think ties that all together is a shift, and I think this might be the most important one, a shift away from the striving mode that many of us are in. If I just work harder, doing more of what I've always done, I can wrestle my way through this period, that striving stance, to move away from that into a place of surrender. And again, I don't mean giving up, but a deep spiritual yielding of acknowledging this is where we are. This has something to teach us. There's something for us to learn here. And as soon as I quit trying to strive to do all the things that I did before, and I lean into what this season might be teaching me, how God might be trying to transform me here, then I can actually begin to discover a pathway forward.
Because so much of leadership, the kind of caricature of leadership is you set a course and you move forward, and you're going to be active, and I know what to do and follow me. And the reality is right now so many don't know what to do, and maybe if you just kind of set that course forward, you could cause more problems, right? You're saying surrender, listen, and this isn't the time to just kind of plow forward, perhaps. Is that right?
Because we most change management is built on the assumption that you know where you're standing and you know where you're going to.